The plastics inside the dashboards were tacky. There's no other word for it. The absolute tacky. Rusting is another problem, more in commercial vehicles, because India, especially in the Western Ghats, prone to rusting. Paint, the quality of paint. So very specific, we reached out to the business saying, what are the top 6 business areas or technical areas where our vehicles must be taking a bashing or beating in the market. So again, similar approach, sending the people into the market, understanding those areas. And then we worked with the business to identify who are the top experts within the company who you would like us to work with. So these top experts, we got 16 of them in 16 areas, and each of them had a sub-expert, so they also co-opted a few people. So, plastics, resting, metalworking, top of the mind, of course, upholstery, etc. Each discipline needed some work. And one of the exciting things that came up is the Gen Next is talking about so you might find that the newer Tata cars, for example, have a lot of connectivity features. You might actually be able to run your office from the back seat. Short of video conferencing, you can do everything. So those other researches also came up. Net, we have this a pool of 16 subject matter experts who then our job was to get them tied up with instructional designers and people who can, so extracting the knowledge which is resident in their head outside. So slowly from getting those experts to actually, they were moved away from their jobs for 6 months. And they spent those 6 months working and creating content, which is so far seen as a outsourced thing. Oh, get somebody from outside, let them develop content. So these experts develop the content, and now I think the gift that the company has is what was resident in the heads of so many experts is actually now knowledge of the company. And they themselves have further created pools of people. So I think, I don't know, Sujaya was also invited to our factory in Pune. She was, presiding over a particular function. Now that whole initiative is called I Teach. It's again not patented or anything, but the fact is I'm taking ownership of teaching. So getting line managers to get involved not only in content creation, in teaching, there's a whole ecosystem which encourages line managers to do that. Many of them are actually also master coaches and teachers. So how do you just change so I think in a couple of years, of course, the initiative has won a couple of awards, including one at the LNOD forum. A case study has been written by the Richard Ivey Business School. It recently got published. So I think it is about understanding where we need to hold back on conventional wisdom and bring our insight and say what we need to do. Because certainly somewhere I got a sense that here we are working for a very proud company. There's a lot of wealth of information resident. It's perhaps we become too siloed. The people who are designing cars are maybe not getting the feedback from marketing. They are so obsessed with the technology. How do you bring all of them together to design better cars, to design, even for the current business, how can we do a better job creating better trucks? So it was not about just the future. It was also about strengthening the today. The trigger there was return to profitability. So how do you get the whole organization geared up to, the common business agenda of the company? So that's an example.
Thank you. Can we give a round of applause for, again, brilliant story that he's sharing with us. Dr. Chanda, we let you have the last word on this round.
Thank you. Not sure any word is the last word. So I'll answer that straight. This time the question is looking good. What can HR professionals do to remain focused? My experience is to stay credible. Personal credibility, much more than intellectual prowess, is actually far more important. Even if you have the best of ideas, if you are not a credible individual, you cannot influence. And by the way, credibility comes from denying yourself the temptation to always engage with the strategic parts of the organization. Because much like the way to a man's heart is through his food or through his stomach, much like the way to the heart of a CEO or the organization is not often the next best strategy of the company, but a small little thing which will make a big difference to somebody's life or a situation or a company's need. So the ability to straddle between strategy and execution, between the profound and the trivial, is what makes a complete executive, including an HR executive. So very often, a lot of the youngsters are very often, I can't hire young people into HR because they all want to do my job, which they don't know is actually a lot more less than what they would do truly if they come in. Because I had to give them photocopying, but I am happy to do it myself. There is no problem. Everybody wants to do the strategy job. And where is the strategy? You don't create a strategy every day. You execute a strategy till you find there is a need to create a new strategy, isn't it? And the second one, the execution takes a longer time. So let me give you two examples. I worked for a 6 years ago, global multinational, 125,000 employees in India alone. Of course, the other countries had more. And big time, profits falling, the hardware part of the business not doing well, CEO wanting every part of the business to contribute to bottom line improvement. Therefore, since they can't sell more, spend less. I mean, this is the usual struggle in businesses, isn't it? So the portion of HR came, and so I was asked in a management team meeting, so what would HR do to contribute to bottom line and reduce costs? And I went back to my team. We draw up a list of all things that are charged to HR and looked at what are the cost elements. And the element that came up the biggest was free coffee and tea at the workplace. Several crores, simply because employees were getting free coffee and tea. Not that I alone did it, but it did occur to me first that what happens if we just stop that? What's wrong in stopping tea coffee? Companies are not, charity houses. If it costs us a lot of money and we can't afford it, we will stop it. Oh, it was anathema. It was huge problem. The CEO himself was worried. A lot of people in HR protested. But some people in the global system liked me because I came up with a good idea, and Indians don't get a little more coffee, tea. Good for somebody else. So this is okay. But I was convinced. I was convinced that I don't have another low-hanging fruit which I can handle. I don't have a lever, but I must join the corporate effort of reducing costs. And even if it means that these people, most of them were extremely well paid, and they all could afford a cup of coffee or tea. All that we did is we launched that in a wonderful way. We converted office spaces, created pantry spaces, hired people who could make tea and sell at a certain price. And given the size and volume we had, we could negotiate very good prices. And wherever there were cafeterias, we gave them to cafe coffee days and baristas and all that. So we created plenty of tea, coffee availability in the company, but asked people to pay. Okay, I come to another company. So I find that it's very set of people who are extremely useful research scientists. A lot of them young. I walk around and I see that I have small discussions with them, and they all told me that, look, one of our big time wasters is that we have to go every late afternoon. We're extremely hungry. Our experiments don't end till about 8 o'clock. And about 8 o'clock 5 o'clock in the evening, we all feel very hungry. And in the campus, there is nothing available. So what we do is we actually go out of the campus. It almost takes 45 minutes. We eat mirchi, bhaji, this, that, and all unhealthy stuff, and come back. So same mind, which said at that time that withdrawing tea coffee was okay. I went and persuaded the CEO that we already have tea coffee. What we don't have is snacks. So let us introduce snacks. So right now you come in many parts of my company, you would find next to the tea coffee machine, there is snacks and all kinds of snacks. I like bhel, so I put bhel also. I just used that opportunity to get my snack. And some other people like muruku, so we got muruku there. Now the same mind at one place had no dogma that tea coffee is a virtue and it must be given to employees for free. Another time felt that it is a need of the hour and we should give it. Both of them had a business justification. Here it saved time and there was evidence to it. Employee feedback really improved. CEO appreciated. Their CEO appreciated. Cost really came down, went to bottom. What is the bottom line for me? as HR leader, I cannot afford to have dogmas. I have to be agnostic, including to my beliefs. I must learn to do what it takes to do for the company's good. I am hired not to improve my resume or my intellectual excitement. A company is not a canvas for me to paint. Company is a solid business entity. It needs things to be done that are relevant to the company. So you go and find what is relevant and do it. As you do it, you establish your personal credibility and your contributions make business difference. And that is, even if it doesn't enter into the league, neither withdrawal of coffee, tea, nor adding snacks is a best practice. But it is a relevant practice. This is my experience.
Thank you. Superb. Can we give him a round of applause for sharing that as well? Thank you very much. I'm going to turn this over to the audience. Anyone in the audience who has a view, wants to share an experience of having pushed back on the temptation to copy and instead having created your own practice. Anyone at all here?
So as always, I'm trying to be different. I think in the changing environment, it is neither the best practice nor the next practice that makes a difference. What really makes the difference is a continuous search for what is called the epiphanous moment. The moment or the point where you reveal epiphany. Epiphany means a sudden search or a sudden realization which makes you believe, oh my God, I always believed in this myth. And when I go into the deep insights of people behavior, when I go deep inside into understanding the organization, how the normal patterns work, and therefore, suddenly when I go into the deep insights and I find an epiphanous moment, Taleb calls it the black swan moment, realization that breaks the myth and makes you believe that all along when we used to think in a pattern, this is how it worked, now we change it, and that's going to make a difference. That practice is what is going to make a difference. Because fine, you realize it, you make the differences, you adopt best practices, it works for a while, sometimes it's not in the culture. Sustainability is always an issue, all best practices go out of the window every 2-3 years, we bring in some new best practice, you do either Japanese best practices, American best practices also best practice of GE. So we keep doing all of that, but the reality is, how deep are your insights and observations into how business and people behave? And how are you able to find those epiphanous moments which really make the changing of the path? That is the reality and success.
So agreed. Yep. Round of applause for that thought. I'm going to now do something which is my favorite part of the panel discussion, is we're going to do a quick rapid fire round. I had planned one, but we'll make it two. Primarily because there seem to be, interest and expectation from the audience to want to know, therefore, what are the competencies HR professionals need to develop for the future should they want to actually contribute to being able to, like we said, creating or even recognizing those moments of being able to create a practice. How do they get more aligned to strategy? How do they get invited to the strategy table and actually understand what is being served there? Really an extension of what you're saying. We're good at the transaction part, good at the relationship part. Let's now build on the strategic part. So I'm going to do a quick rapid fire round. Start with you, Dr. Chandra, because you're already so profound and we're always listening to every single word and learning from it. Why don't you tell us what do you believe are the top 3 competencies an HR professional requires for the agenda of the future?
Common sense. So, first thing is the top 3 will change. And you need to have those top 3 which make sense to the job you are holding at hand. So if I have the best top 3 competencies, but they're not applicable to my organization, my need, then it's of no use. So please understand everything has a context. What is top 3 has a context. So therefore, what is the competency here? Ability to find strategic fit between what you want to do and what the business needs is a competency. I don't know how else it is described. I'm sure somebody will find wonderful words for it. But this is how I see it. Ability to be relevant, to find a fit between what you do. And therefore, it perhaps is rooted in what is known as learning agility in a manner that you are constantly learning, constantly saying that, okay, what I know is not enough, what I don't know is required to be known, and I will do. This is my first thing that has helped me succeed in different situations, because I go to everything with an open mind and say, okay, what does it need to be done here? And I just bring whatever is the best fit there. And if I can find the fit, it works. Competency one, somewhat, you may call it learning agility, strategic fit, whatever. The second competency that kind of weatherproof, this one is weatherproof, and therefore it makes you ready for different organizations, sometimes in telecom, sometimes in consulting, sometimes in pharma. Roughly, some of these are transferable competencies. The second one is not transferable, which is the ability to understand the exact business context and levers of the organization. Not the broad catalog-based learning, but to understand, what is first to file in a market, what is the, peak sales value of a pharma product which will be launched at 4 years from now, therefore what it will do. The ability to very clearly understand your business. I'm talking of for-profit organizations. When you are an HR manager, you work for business. So you need to know the understanding of business in a level of detail, not at a level of high level, but in a sharp way, exactly how you can contribute. So that is the second kind of competence. The third is an all-weather competency, which is of all the other professionals, HR person is the one. Somebody said housewife, somebody said various things, but HR person is the one I would be more proud to recommend that we take stake our claim to being more patient, more tolerant, more open, more diverse, more eclectical. All these are related issues, You perseverance, patience, ability to listen, ability to lend your shoulder to people to cry on you, for people to open up before you, just bridging the, connecting the dots, bridging the gaps, being the glue, being the human being that you are, which, the warm, nice human being, which brings the human agenda to business. Whether it is business-centric people, people-centric business, at the end of the day, the human agenda must triumph. I believe in people, truly, not as an instrumentality of doing something, but as ends in themselves. So the genuine, deep interest in the human cause, and therefore being a refined human being yourself, the reputation that you are a good man, I would any day die for, than the reputation that I was president or whatever I was. So the combination of the three.
So well articulated. Thank you so much for saying this.
The three combinations: learn always, know the business deeply, be a good human being.
Thank you.
Okay.
Prince, we turn this over
just
to you.
to build on this, I will not take too much of this thing. Creative agility, right? Because if you have to face every day a different situation. We cannot have a one-pocket solution for everything, right? And business leaders look for things that will be relevant for them. Employees look for things that would be helpful for them to grow as a person, grow as an employee, grow as a better this thing, right? Therefore, creative agility is something which is required. Second is, I like what Adil had said, epiphany. I call it curiosity and ability to insight out of things what you see, but others don't see. Right? Because everybody sees, then it is not thing. Therefore, for each person, there's a different need. Right? And third is be as helpful as possible. In my dictionary, there's nothing called no. Right? But when you tell a no, right, it should be very clear that it is not a no. Afterwards, it should not come up and then become an yes, right? So you should find ways and means to help people, help business leaders, help the organization, help the society, right? And be a real role model of what people centricity really means in a business context.
Can we hear a round of applause for him for that? Thank you, Prince. Very good thoughts. Can we hear you, Vikram?
Yeah, I think the three things I'll broadly keep my observations or skills recommended on the left brain side, maybe one on the other side. First is the strategic ability. I think I would really look for HR professionals who have the ability to look into the future. Oil prices for us in Reliance are under $50. So what does that mean? Can you paint 3 scenarios? What if it goes up to about 60? What if it goes down to 40? And so the ability to understand what will life be, because we are after all employed by a for-profit organization. So that ability to partner also and work on the strategic planning agenda. The second, I think I like epiphany and insights. My invitation is, let it be coming out of the well of data. Today, HR data sits on broad, I don't know about your organization, in my case it sits on 3 systems. There's an SAP data, the performance data sits on one system, the learning data sits on another system, and I think we are alone. I'm the only organization having this problem. But the ability, therefore, to generate insights and epiphanies, if it can come out of the well of data, because otherwise we might be the only function making emotional calls, and that's what makes people uncomfortable, because we are surrounded by businessmen who take calls only from data. So that data analytics, publish scorecards. I don't want to embarrass us, but how many of us publish regular scorecards? Yes, many companies do, but I think it's also an invitation to be known as that function which regularly does. And the third thing I think is